Welcome to another episode of the Bank Free Blueprint Podcast. Today I have with me Arvel Hedrick. Arvel is a managing partner with Turnkey Capital in Cedar Park, Texas. That's right outside of Austin. So welcome, Arvel.
Thanks, Tom. It's a real pleasure to be joining you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. I know we've had, you've been on several times and we've had a lot of great responses, and so I really appreciate you taking the time to join me again on this podcast. And so the goal for today's podcast, what we want to do, we want to talk to both sides of the equation: active investors who are doing the deals where they are maybe looking for cash, so they're doing a lot of the work and looking for investment partners. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have the investors who are looking for deals, who are looking to fund deals. And we want to talk today about risk mitigation. What are some of the things that you do you're presenting it to maybe investment partners? Just so if we can set this up sort of as a discussion back and forth as to what are some of the things that investors should look for and active investors should provide in order to make their chances of bringing on a good money partner more likely. So again, thank you, Arvel. And let's just start out with, you have a process of vetting a deal and understanding what the risks are, ways of controlling risks, mitigating them, eliminating them. What's your process? Let's just start with that, what your process is.
So basically our process is we have an incoming deal and we ask a few questions of the investor. Mm-hmm. Number one, what's your purchase price? Number two, what's the construction cost, if any? And then finally, number three, what is your after repair value? Mm-hmm. So with these three things, we can quickly evaluate the deal. Then, of course, we need an address to understand what area of whatever metroplex they may be investing in. That is this an area that we feel will have the absorption rate will be, after they completed the project, is it going to be viable for them to sell it relatively quickly within the, let's say, the days on market within that timeline.
Yeah. So, so we find a somebody brings us a property, or we find a property, we look at it, we see what the purchase price is, the construction costs, the completed value, estimated completed value, and then I imagine we get to know what amount of time it's going to take, like how many minutes it will take. And the one that I like to add to that is how much money or how much cash that active investor plans on putting into it. And so we have those numbers, and we can do that quick first pass on it. And you're saying that one of the things that ties in with that is obviously the absorption rate, the what is the demand going to be for that property? How quickly is it likely to sell once it's completed? Is that right?
That's correct. Okay. And it not only applies to for instance, a ground up construction or a rehab project that we plan on reselling after the project. Mm-hmm. The metrics might change if it's a commercial project that it might be an equity play that may go longer or something like that. Or I'm going to turn around and convert this into a rental and keep this within the active investor actually keeps this within their inventory. Mm-hmm. So those are, so does my investor also have the CMAs or comps? Do they have a BPO at the very least? A broker price opinion. An appraisal mm-hmm. As well. So the appraisal is always great to have.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're looking at deals, we look at really three things, I think. One is the deal itself. The other is the team and how it's going to be implemented, and then the third is the money, of course. So those are the three pieces to the equation. So let's just take it. Maybe let's break that out. If we start with, we have the deal, and let's say that the deal is looking good. The numbers, the initial numbers are looking good. And the way I like to do it, I always like to do that first pass where we can make a determination. If we think we can make the determination of, yes, this may be a project, or no, it doesn't fit our criteria. And so let's just say that we've gotten to the point of the numbers, the initial numbers look like they'll work, like it'll be a good deal to take that next step of vetting. When we're looking at deals, so we have location, we have another one would be budgets, right? So what's your process for looking at budgets?
So the process to look at budgets, number one, what's the complexity of the work that's involved? So do they have a scope of work? Do they have a construction line item budget? What's the dollar amount to that? So depending on which model we want to use, is the project cost, is it viable? And of course, with a ground up construction, your project to cost is going to be much greater than a simple rehab.
Okay, when you say project cost, so would that be the cost of the renovation, the work that needs to be done, as compared to the cost of the purchase price?
Right.
So
Correct.
we have a ratio there. Let's say that it's a 50-50. Let's say that the purchase price is $100,000 and the renovation cost is $100,000. Right. And so that's, I believe, what you're talking about.
That's correct.
Ratio. And then there's, let's say it's 25,000 to 100,000. That is a lot different profile than a 1-to-1, right? So it's a
Correct.
1-to-5 or a 1-to-1, whatever that may be. And so I liked what you said about the about the complexity, because with complexity is moving parts, right? And
right, exactly. And this comes back to evaluating, what kind of team am I working with? Are they experienced? Are they brand new out of the gate? We even take into account, well, what investment group are they working with? Are they Fortune Builder? Are they some other group?
So what's their experience? Are they brand new out of a course, or do they have a good background, either themselves or their team?
Right, exactly. Do they have a strong GC to manage the project, or a strong project manager, or are they teaming up with someone who has a few deals under their belt? That's always good to look at. What's their joint venture team look like? Right.
Yeah, and another way that I like looking at it myself when I'm looking at deals is, I guess we call them the 5 C's of credit, right? There's the character, capacity, capital, collateral, and condition. And if we follow those 5 C's and we do it for both the project and the team, that's one way where we can think through the process of really foreseeing risks, understanding potential risks, understanding where there might be shortfalls, so that those risks can, again, be either mitigated or eliminated. So what you're saying about the team, that obviously would be in the capacity portion of it. Does the team have the capacity to get the project done on time and on budget?
Correct. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah. So character, obviously, character of the team. Do they have integrity? Do they have they proven themselves? Do they have the trust from their team members?
It may be funny. I mean, even the reputation with the peers and how they interact with the community. That's also important to us.
You just mentioned right before the call an example of someone who, when that, if I understand correctly, when that person goes into a certain municipality, certain city hall, in an area that he had been working in earlier, his reputation has been tarnished a bit based on some things that might have happened in the past. And so,
right. And actually, I would literally call it stigmatized.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the fact that they saw the property does this person actually still own this property? And the thought was, we've been out there so many times, he's feigned whatever, but continue to work
mm-hmm.
on this project without the permits, without these things. And so makes it very difficult for me to even think about working with them.
Sure.
As a partner.
Well, and what the underlying issue there really is trust, right?
Right, exactly.
It's hard to trust. And I like using the analogy of it takes a long time to fill a bucket with trust if it's one drop at a time. I mean, that's really how you build trust. And all it takes is tripping over that bucket one time, knocking it over one time, and the trust is gone. It takes a long time to fill that back up again. And so trust is really a critical factor in there. And when you're doing your due diligence, I'm sure you're able to tell, like you just said there, that's a trust issue.
Yeah, and basically what we did was we actually took a look at the property, went back to the local municipality, what permits have been pulled. I mean, there was a lot of code violations, a lot of things that we saw that were huge red flags for us.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, it actually took having a discussion with the code enforcement officer who handled this particular case or property. And he basically told me in no certain terms, he was very transparent, that if they see this property and this owner come in, even if he may put up another, they will shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because he had lost all trust with the local
code
enforcement group there.
Yeah. And how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And
correct. That's exactly right.
If they've already proven that whoever that party is, that they aren't, the trust is not there. So what will it look like down the line? So it's a pretty good predictor of what the future will be if the past.
Exactly.
So let's go down that path with the team or the active investor himself. What other things, like for instance, background checks or?
So we do have a process where we go through the background and credit check that particular active investor would pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll go into, okay, let's look at what his portfolio looks like right now and how many active projects does he have? How many completed projects does he have? Those are the things we look. Was he on time? Was he on budget? Was there a stall? Why?
Mm-hmm.
We'll go look at, if he has several active projects, we'll go back and look. When was the last time permits were pulled?
Yeah.
Is he on time, or is this project stalled?
Mm-hmm.
For instance.
Yes. So if let's say an active investor is putting their package together for a passive investor to look at, and they're looking to bring money partners on, to be able to have that in the packet of the presentation, to show the track record, to show the history, to show the deals, even the one thing that one way of really, and this is more from the passive side, if you ask someone how many deals they've done and you ask them were they profitable, how did they go, you're going to get a certain answer. And then later on in the due diligence, you're asking for the HUD statement and the closing statement to really back that up. If those two don't match, if what that person said early on doesn't match with what the HUD statement says, that's a big trust issue. I would much rather have somebody say we've done 5 deals, and 2 of them they just did not do very well. We learned a lot, but they did not turn out. 3 of them turned out really well. I'd much rather hear that than to have somebody say yes, all 5 of them turned out, and then we look it up and we find that there was a break even or even possibly a loss on 1 or 2 of them. That totally blows credit out. So if you're putting together your due diligence packet, connect the dots to make sure that the money partner is going to really, what you're doing is you're building confidence through that process. So, any thoughts further on that?
I think you nailed it beautifully. It was that whole point of, I love it when, they don't just, an active investor doesn't just focus on his successes, but also says, we had a couple failures here that we really learned from.
Yeah.
And we don't want to repeat those again. And so it gives you this amount of confidence of saying, we've been there with you. We know exactly how you feel.
Yes.
Right.
So,
it definitely gives you a much better feel for it. When you have that amount of transparency. Yep.
Good. Any other things that come to mind when doing due diligence on, or let's say that let's talk about the active investor themselves. What advice do you have for someone that's going to talk with someone that has money that they're looking to bring on as a money partner? What would you suggest their approach be as it relates to being able to really show that they're going to be able to perform?
Okay, so basically, number one is I want to see confidence from an active investor. Not necessarily arrogance or caught up in their ego mind, but I want to see confidence.
Yeah,
this is a great opportunity. I don't want to see them in a state of, let's say, scarcity where they're begging.
Yeah, waffling.
Oh, please.
Yeah, right.
That immediately turns off money partners.
Yeah.
That is a big, red flag for a money partner. Is what's the matter with this guy? Is this deal solid or not? It suddenly brings up a question of, can I trust him? Why is he so desperate?
Yeah,
last act of desperation.
Yeah, right. There's a balance there, right? It's coming together from a place of equal footing, where if I'm a money partner and I sense a neediness, that totally it switches the discussion, or it switches the dynamics of the discussion to, what, you need me? Then it's a difference between a draw and a pull, right?
Exactly.
So, or I mean, a draw and a push, I should say. So if I feel like I'm being pushed by someone who's needy, that needs the money, that's a different conversation than if I'm drawn towards a deal, or if I'm the active investor and I'm talking to someone. Let's say I'm talking to you, and I'm approaching it from the standpoint that I'm doing this deal and we're moving forward. Is it something that you're interested in looking at? And we can do this together. We'll go side by side, rather than me coming to you and saying, here's a deal. I need to get it funded. What can you do for me? If I don't get my money now, it's not going to work out. Then it's it's a difference between like a toe-to-toe discussion versus a shoulder-to-shoulder discussion. I'm going out, I'm getting this deal done, I'm going to do it. Do you want to join in me? And we'll walk hand in hand and get the deal done together, versus the sort of the hierarchy, or the toe-to-toe, I guess is the way I would say it, where it's a completely different conversation once it gets tilted to the point of being needy.
Right. And that was a perfect, what you just said about need. When you give off an aura or a frequency that you're coming from a place of need, what does that create? It creates more need in your life. It doesn't create that more abundance coming your way or wealth coming your way. It creates literally more need.
Yeah.
And I thought that was perfect. You mentioned the need factor.
Yeah, it's about drawing someone to realize that yes, this could be a benefit to that person, that it's again, rather than feeling pushed but drawn.
You want to attract more
Mhm.
wealth. You want to attract those people who want to invest
Mm-hmm. Yep.
instead of needing them to. I think that was a great way to put it, Tom.
Yeah. Thank you. And okay, so what else do you? Just on background checks. Do you do background checks? How do you do?
We do background checks and and basically also the credit check.
Mm-hmm.
What are we looking for? We're looking for anything that's recent,
Mm-hmm.
within the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, if we do see a black mark, we will question it and say, okay, what happened here? Foreclosures, of course, are going to be a big red flag. On the background checks, really, we're looking for fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Does this person have a history of fraud? And the big thing is a lot of times deals will come to you from brokers who might masquerade as good friends, that they have already done the due diligence. You don't have to worry about this. And that with me is when I hear that from a broker or someone I do trust, that's a big red flag for me. That's like, okay, I really now need to do the due diligence.
Yeah.
Just because it isn't a matter of trust. It's a matter of, I want to keep the trust of my money partners, and I'm never going to put their investments at risk.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that brings up a point that I think is really important, and that is looking at motivating factors. So, is there an alignment of interest? Is there an extra motive behind why somebody might be doing that? So when you mentioned that, an example came to mind. A while back, I had somebody that I was mentoring, and they had brought me a deal, and they thought it looked pretty good, but they wanted to have me just double check the numbers. So I looked at the numbers, went through them, and I told them, my opinion is that there's not enough room. There's not enough margin here. I think it's just a little too skinny to really be worth the effort, and also to really keep the risk profile low enough. And he was disappointed, but he went back to his agent that was selling the property, and he told him that no, he just really didn't want to, because he didn't feel the value was there. And the agent just was adamant that it was just this amazing deal, that the numbers that he was using were just that he was being too conservative and all of this. And so I said, so he came back to me and told me that. And I said, well, I looked at it again. I still felt the same way. It just didn't have enough meat on the bone. So I suggested that he go back, and I said, what if you were to offer him half of the commission up front, and tell him you would do the deal, but you wanted the deal structured so that half his commission would be paid up front and the other half would be paid on the back end, but it would be doubled. And I think you and I might have spoken about this on one other episode. But I mean, to me, it's a great example of understanding motivating factors. So in this case, that agent, which supposedly the deal would have been only a 6-month deal, it would have been just a barn burner, all kinds of money to be made on it. But so the offer was to pay half of the commission up front and the other half on the back end, except double. So the agent would have made half again as much if he had just waited that 6 months to go to the other for the second half of the money. And the agent said, absolutely not. There's absolutely no way he would consider it. So he walked away from the deal instead of taking that offer. And what better way to test it than to see if that agent was willing to put his money on his potential. He wasn't even putting money on the line. He was putting potential future money on the line. So he walked away from that. So that would tell me that there's something really to look at about the risk profile, because the alignment of interest, I don't think were there. If that agent had felt like it was that good a deal, why wouldn't he have at least considered it? But it was an absolute no. It wasn't, well, I don't think I can get it done this way. It was an absolute no. And so doing different things, always trying to understand what the motivating factor is of the person. So if let's say a broker brings a deal to you and they're looking for the gap funding, all it needs is another 15% of the capital stack of what's needed. And so it's a small amount that they need, but that's all they need. And they tell you, yes, it's a great deal. Well, that's different. That's a different risk profile if they're asking you to come in with a gap funding or a subordinate position to them, because they're being protected by money that you'd be bringing in. That risk profile or that alignment of interest is different than if they come in and say, we're 15% short on our capital stack. You come in alongside of us. We'll fund the deal together. Same position, not a subordinate or junior position. That's a different risk profile because now you're getting in the boat with them. You're not being pulled behind the boat. You're getting in the boat with them.
Exactly.
So really kind of thinking it through in anything that we're doing in the business. What is the motivating factor? And that's why I really like the model that we talk about a lot, and that's a collaboration model where there's profit sharing, there's everybody gets compensated for what they do. It's a true alignment of interest to bring the entire team together. Everybody's working together to get that end result done, which is having a profitable, safe deal done on budget, on time. And so, yeah, alignment of interest is definitely a key point. How about inspections? You mentioned appraisals and broker price opinions or BPOs. How about inspections? How do you handle them?
Inspections on the pre-purchase, or
yeah, both. So there's inspections before the
and also on the draw inspections.
Yeah, before you fund it, and then during the process of funding for the draw request. Do you have any particular guidelines that you aim for there?
Yeah. So basically, what we do is we tell our investor that basically that we only pay for work that is completed.
Mm-hmm.
And so as work is being completed, you hit your milestones, you tell us what work has been completed, they send us a draw request, and then we immediately dispatch, if it's not we ourselves personally, we'll work with basically a real estate service company such as Trinity. Another one is Land Gorilla. There's a couple others out there that kind of will help you with construction control. Am I an expert in looking at a foundation? No. So that's why I call Trinity out to take a look at that foundation. Mm-hmm. Can I inspect framing, make sure it's done correctly? Of course. I can see that's completed. Can I see that the plumbing roughing is complete? Yes, I can handle that. Mm-hmm. But as far as really going through certain aspects on a foundation or let the professionals handle those items.
Yeah, and then you have the inspections during the draw period to make sure that the amount of work is done that they say is done.
Correct, and basically it's not only is the work completed, do we have a green tag that's required on that work that's also been issued, and that once we see that green tag, we release those funds. Mm-hmm. And like I said, only for that work that's completed.
Yeah, and by green tag, you mean it's met.
It's been inspected by the city of the metroplex of that, or the locale of that particular project.
Yeah, right. And here, this brings up the alignment of interest again. So in this case, I'm going to guess that you don't tell the borrower, just go ahead and have somebody inspect it and have that inspector get back to me. Or in the case of broker price opinion or appraisals, I'm going to guess that you don't say, to that borrower, just go ahead and get an appraisal done and send me the appraisal.
No, we'll always order the appraisal, and we'll know who the appraiser that's going out is. And we normally try and work with local appraisers in that area, because that gives us a much better picture of what the true value is of that property. They've been in and out. They know the areas much better than we do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I
We
guess
won't necessarily work with a national service that's going to send us over a desktop appraisal. That doesn't quite fit our profile for how we evaluate our properties.
Yeah, and one of the keys that I think is important is to really work with third-party appraisers. People. So my point, I guess, was that we don't ask the borrower to get an.
We don't ask the borrower to call up his buddy, who's the appraiser, or a realtor to give me the BPO. I'll call a local realtor in that area. I'll call a local appraiser, and I will order up the BPO or the appraisal.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that we don't trust that borrower. It's just that it's best practices to never allow that to even be a question whether there's integrity or not, because if it's done by a third party, it's a disinterested third party that's gonna.
It's an objective third party that gives us a separation of duties throughout. And so that, in a sense, we're building our own compliance model and working and adhering to that. So that once we have the $50 million fund and our investors are asking us, well, how do you do your due diligence? Here's the entire, as you said, here's our risk mitigation checklist, our matrix that we're going by, and these are the things, and this is how it's done.
Yep. Sometimes we get asked whether we will allow the contractor's work in the deal to be their skin in the game. And by skin in the game or skin in the deal, what I mean by that is as an active investor, if I'm the borrower, what do I have to lose if I walk away from the project, if I don't perform? And I like the idea of having at least 10 to 15% of the total capital stack in some form of collateral. And so, and that then becomes their skin in the game. And so whether it's cash or if it's other property as collateral. So in some cases though, I get contractors or borrowers that are going to ask, well, I'm willing to do the work for nothing, or I'm willing to wait to get paid for my work until the project is completed. And I have some pretty big reservations about that. How do you deal with that?
I also would have big reservations of it, because the whole model that we work on, which is similar to yours, Tom, is it's based on everyone having an equitable piece or equitable interest in the project. Like you said, it's either the cross collateral property, is it seller carryback, or is it cash? One of the two. Yeah. And we go on the premise everyone is paid their equal share, and basically the project would pays for everything. So if we were to use that exchange of work, then the whole model breaks down.
Yeah, the thing that one of the things I'm most concerned about there is what happens if that borrower, let's say something that happens to that person, then right there the project becomes short on money. There's a shortfall on the cash that's going to be required to get the deal done. Or let's say that he gets started. Let's say I'm the borrower and I get started, and 3 weeks from now I find another project that's much sweeter than this one, and I can only do one of them, so I walk away from this one in order to do another one. Now, if I don't have my skin in the game, I'm going to end up walking away. I potentially could walk away. Now, and it's not only that, the walking away, but it's also then creating a gap there where there's not enough money to get the deal done. So, so there's going to have to be more money brought in to hire somebody to fill that space, that work that was not budgeted for. Another thing that I know has worked well for us, and I suggest that people at least consider it, if you're an active investor and you really want to show the passive investor or the money partner that you're serious and that you believe in a deal, why not take, when you're doing the deal and you're structuring, why not, you're likely going to have a brand new LLC. that is going to be holding the property. The LLC will be the borrower. And so why not take that and assign those membership units over to the investor, the passive investor, and put that assignment of interest into a third-party escrow. Some people might have might not agree with that. To me, it's a way to show that you're really serious about the project. You're serious that the deal is going to get done on time and on budget. And if there's a huge resistance on it, then I would question why there's a huge resistance. Is there not confidence that the deal will be done? So just to finish explaining what would happen, let's say that the membership units are put in third-party escrow. There would be instructions on there that if I'm the borrower, if I don't perform, if I don't get this deal done, if I don't follow that preset criteria, then those membership units get assigned to the money partner, and that money partner then does not have to go through the foreclosure process. So that's one thing that we do a lot, and our developers or borrowers are very seldom is there any resistance on it, because the project itself is strong enough, and there's really there's very minimal concern that would ever be enacted anyway.
Right, and that gives a certain level of confidence to our money partners for sure. Mm-hmm. When they see that, wow, you set up an entity, and if our investor fails to perform, mm-hmm. he can be replaced. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does, without being so, I guess, graphic about it. I mean, if something happens, heaven forbid, a heart attack of your investor, well, we've got to continue on with the project. It just can't, die with him. We've got to continue on.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned that, because we had done this on a project up in the upper Midwest where we had this provision in the contract. The borrower did pass away halfway through the project, and it was everything that he owned needed to go through probate. Well, in this case, because the membership units were held in a third-party escrow, the instructions said one of the non-performance criteria was in the event of death. And so that LLC was assigned, I mean, it was transferred over to us because he had already signed those documents. And then we just worked out the details of any equity that was left in it to go back to his estate, but it didn't, it allowed the entire project, the project to not get caught up in the probate process. So, you just never know what circumstances there are. So it's really about trying to identify every single risk you can think of, and then either mitigate it or eliminate it, or just don't do the deal. So you must have some sort of a list that you work with when you're doing your underwriting for like an underwriting criteria list.
We do have a risk mitigation checklist mm-hmm. that we go through, and basically it's sectioned out into when the deal basically comes in. So let's say project origination, mm-hmm. Basically vetting the borrower, vetting the closing of the deal. Mm-hmm. Do we have everything in place for the construction control?
Yeah. So it's really a list that triggers you to think of everything.
Right. Exactly. So there's different sections of it, and it goes through every phase of a project for us, mm-hmm. from a lender's perspective.
Yeah.
And it's funny. we get to the end of a project, it's like you forget little things, and that was why we created the checklist.
Yeah, and what I really like to advise anybody that I'm mentoring or working with is to keep a list at the side on your desk, one that is readily available so that anytime that you encounter some sort of a risk, or you hear of somebody else that's had an issue, anything that could potentially be a risk, getting that written down, getting it on the checklist. It's so simple to just, if it doesn't apply to the deal, just check it off. And at least you know that next time, if a deal comes through, let's say that you're only working on residential, but someday you might be doing commercial, and you've got somebody that you know that went through a commercial deal and they had problems with their deal, and you see what some of the problems were. Why not jot those points down on your checklist and just keep that as an ongoing, just constantly adding to the checklist? And just, I mean, what better way to reduce your own risk than by finding out how other people reduce theirs?
Right, and the great thing about checklists, it cuts down on the amount of back and forth phone calls, emails.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, because now you get all your questions down and you ask them all at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like the idea that you just brought up, having it right there by the phone.
Yeah, just having
so
it
that
so
you
handy.
Can reference it quickly, and it's right there in front of you.
Well, and then having it so handy that when you hear something, when you think of something that can be added to it, it's really, I mean, the more that we have for trigger points of identifying or thinking through the entire process, the more likely it is that we're going to identify the risk, and the more likely we're going to be able to mitigate it or eliminate it. So, so you, is there any chance that you'd be open to sharing that your risk mitigation list?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll definitely be sharing that out, and I'll send that over to you.
Okay. If I guess what I'm asking is if our listeners are looking for, I'm guessing that some might appreciate a risk mitigation list, and so is that something that you're able to share with them?
Yes, it is.
Great. And how would someone get a hold of you?
So basically, we can be contacted at info@turnkey, TURNKEY, capital, CAPITAL, group.com. That's info@turnkeycapitalgroup.com. And we'll, just send us an email to ask us about the risk mitigation checklist, and we'll share it with you.
Okay, and I'm guessing that if they have any other questions about investing or just anything, I'm guessing, just knowing you, I'm sure that you're pretty open to any email that would have questions or anything.
Yes, always.
Okay.
Always. We're always kind of in a sharing and a giving mode here.
Yeah, that's very cool. No, I know that about you and your team. It's always a lot of fun working with you guys. So I think with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've been going for quite a while, and yeah, just to recap, really just understanding the risk, understanding what they are, figuring out ways to make sure that we see the risk, and then once we see them, figuring out how to get them mitigated. There's a lot of different potential ways of mitigating risks, and just keeping that checklist by your side. And if you're an active investor, I was going back to the point of thinking, if I was putting all the money into the deal, or the majority of the money into the deal, what is it that I would want to see? What is it that would make me feel comfortable in putting money in? And when you approach it that way, when you approach a passive investor that way, chances are you're going to get a majority, 90% of any potential objections taken care of right up front. And so in full transparency, just alignment of interest, all those things we always talk about on the show, just very critical to have all that built into our presentation. So Arvel, I want to really thank you again. Appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very, very busy. You got a lot of things, a lot of cool projects going on. And so really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
You bet.
Good talking to you.
All right. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Love y'all. Bye-bye.